Okay, so today we're really getting into the nitty-gritty of sustainability. Specifically, um, we always hear about making industries less wasteful, more efficient, and we're really zeroing in on remanufacturing in the lighting industry. Like, what's the deal with that? We're going to be pulling some really interesting insights from Tamlet Lighting's T-Talk blog.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's one of those things that, kind of flies under the radar a bit, right? You hear so much about recycling, but remanufacturing is kind of its own beast.
Totally. It's almost like recycling's cooler, older sibling or something, and we're finally giving it some attention. But so, for those of us who maybe haven't really dived into this, what even IS remanufacturing? I feel like sometimes it's used interchangeably with fixing something, but is it more than that?
It's definitely a whole lot more than just a quick fix, yeah. Think of it this way. You've got this old light fixture, maybe it's seen better days, kind of beat up. Instead of just chucking it in the trash, it gets a whole second life. It's taken to a remanufacturing facility, they break it all the way down, swap out any parts that are worn out, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, wow. So it's like a total overhaul.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And it doesn't stop there. After it's all put back together, it gets a serious spa day. Deep cleaning, they inspect every little detail, really make sure it's good as new.
So it's not just slapping on a new coat of paint and calling it good?
No, not at all. The goal is to make these remanufactured products just as good as, if not better than, something brand new. They even put them through all sorts of tests to guarantee they'll perform just as well. The whole point is to give these things a second life, not a second-rate existence.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that really gets at why remanufacturing is such a big deal for sustainability. It's not just about fixing something that's broken. It's about changing how we think about the resources we use.
Exactly. And, it's becoming increasingly important as we become more aware of the environmental impact of, well, everything.
For sure. So let's break down some of those environmental benefits, because I think sometimes it's easy to just throw around a term like sustainability without really digging into what that actually means.
Right. Absolutely. Well, one of the most pressing issues we're facing is electronic e-waste, as it's often called. All those old phones, computers, and yes, light fixtures, they've got to go somewhere, right?
It's not like they magically disappear when you toss them in the bin.
Exactly. And a lot of times they end up in landfills, which is a whole other problem. Remanufacturing tackles this e-waste crisis head on by giving those materials a new purpose, keeping them out of those landfills.
So it's like giving those old gadgets a second chance, right?
Yeah.
Instead of adding to the problem, they become part of the solution.
Precisely. And it's not just about the waste itself, it's also about consuming the resources that go into making these products in the first place. We're talking metals, rare earth elements. Extracting and processing these materials takes a lot of energy and has a big environmental footprint.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about all that when you're just focused on the final product.
Right. So by keeping those materials in circulation, remanufacturing takes a lot of pressure off the planet. It's
Yeah.
like choosing to refill a water bottle instead of buying a new one every time, but on a much larger scale.
Oh, I like that analogy because it really relatable. So we're talking less waste, less demand for new resources. It's all starting to add up. But what about the energy used in the remanufacturing process itself? Is that a significant factor?
That's a great question, and the answer might surprise you. Often, remanufactured products actually use less energy than their older, less efficient counterparts. And what does that mean for the average person? Lower energy bills.
So not only is it good for the environment, but it could also save people money. Talk about a win-win.
But speaking of energy consumption, let's talk about carbon footprint. I imagine that's another area where remanufacturing has a positive impact, right?
Absolutely. Manufacturing brand new products, especially electronics, requires a ton of energy. It's a major contributor to carbon emissions. But when you remanufacture something, you're essentially skipping a lot of those energy-intensive steps. So you significantly reduce the overall carbon footprint.
So to stick with our analogies, it's like choosing to bike to work instead of driving a gas guzzler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're getting where you need to go, but with a much lighter impact on the planet. And all of this really points to a larger shift towards what's called a circular economy. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Something we talk about a lot on the show. But for those who are new to the concept, can you give us a quick rundown of what a circular economy is and how remanufacturing fits into that? Sure. So for a long time, we've operated on this linear model of take, make, dispose. We take resources from the earth, turn them into products, use them for a bit, and then toss them out. A circular economy aims to break that linear cycle.
Makes sense. It's about closing the loop, right?
Exactly. It's about keeping resources in use for as long as possible, minimizing waste and pollution along the way. And remanufacturing is a perfect example of that in action.
It's like taking that linear model and turning it into a loop, kind of like a figure eight, where those resources are constantly flowing back into the system instead of ending up in a landfill. It's a pretty powerful concept. But I have to imagine that even with all these benefits, remanufacturing must face its own set of challenges, right?
All right.
Especially in a fast-paced industry like lighting, where technology is always evolving.
Oh, absolutely. There are always challenges. I think one of the big ones, especially in lighting, is, well, technology, right? The lighting industry changes so fast, like LED technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's like trying to hit a moving target. How can remanufacturing keep up with that pace of innovation and make sure these reimagined products can actually compete with the latest and greatest on the market?
It definitely requires like a commitment to innovation on the remanufacturer's part. It means investing in research and development, always looking for ways to upgrade and adapt those older products. It's about finding ways to incorporate the newest LED tech, maybe boost energy efficiency even more, even like think about aesthetics. Like how can we make these older designs feel fresh again?
So it's not just about extending the life of an old product. It's about making sure it's still relevant, something people actually want to buy.
Exactly. And, that kind of leads into another big hurdle, perception. There can be like a stigma around remanufactured products. Some people might think, oh, it's remanufactured, it's not going to be as good, even though that's often not true at all.
It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water. You can make a fantastic remanufactured product, but you can't force people to change their minds about it.
Right. It's about changing those perceptions. And I think transparency is key here. Companies need to be really upfront about the remanufacturing process, talk about the quality control, the testing, all of that.
I'd imagine certifications and warranties are huge too, right?
Yeah.
Like a seal of approval that says, hey, this product might have a past life, but it's been given a clean bill of health and it's ready to shine.
Absolutely. Building that trust is essential. Think about Patagonia. They have that Worn Wear program, and they've done such a great job of positioning their remanufactured clothing as like a badge of honor.
It's like they've created a cool factor around it, a story that appeals to people who care about sustainability, which, let's be real, more and more people do these days.
Exactly. And then, of course, you've got the logistical stuff, because you need those old light fixtures in the first place to even make remanufacturing possible.
Right. You can't work with what you don't have. So how do you even begin to build a system to collect all those used lighting products?
It takes a lot of collaboration. Manufacturers could team up with retailers to offer take-back programs, give people an incentive to bring in their old fixtures when they're ready for an upgrade, or maybe set up dedicated collection points.
Sounds like a huge logistical challenge, but I guess the payoff is worth it if it means keeping all those valuable materials out of landfills.
Exactly. It's about thinking long term. And of course, you can't talk about this stuff without mentioning the role of government, right? Policy can be a powerful tool when it comes to driving change.
Totally. So what kind of things could governments do to really help move the needle on remanufacturing?
Well, they could offer incentives to manufacturers who are really embracing remanufacturing, like tax breaks or subsidies to make it more financially appealing, or even implement regulations that encourage or maybe even require the use of remanufactured components in certain products.
So it's about creating a system that supports these sustainable practices, not just hoping they'll magically happen on their own.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, it really does come down to consumer demand. As people become more aware of remanufacturing, the benefits both for the environment and their wallets, they can start to vote with their dollars.
It's about making that conscious choice to choose quality and longevity over the allure of new. Because sometimes newer isn't always better.
Precisely. It's a whole shift in how we view consumption, moving away from this disposable mindset and really embracing the idea that things can have multiple lives.
From disposable to durable. I like that.
Right.
But let's get practical for a second. What are some tangible things our listeners can do, starting today, to support this move toward remanufacturing and embrace a more circular economy?
I think we're at this really interesting point where sustainability isn't just some niche thing anymore. It's really becoming mainstream, which is awesome. So what can our listeners do? Where do we even start to support this whole remanufacturing movement? I know we've been focusing on lighting, but obviously this goes way beyond just light fixtures, right? Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is just being a more mindful consumer, in all aspects of your life.
Right. It's not just about light bulbs.
Exactly. But since we are talking lighting, Next time you need new lights, don't just automatically go for whatever's the newest, shiniest thing out there.
Take a second to see if there are remanufactured options, right?
Exactly. You might be surprised by what you find. And like we've been talking about, it can be a win-win.
Yeah.
Good for the planet, potentially easier on your bank account.
Absolutely. Okay, so beyond lighting, though, this whole concept of remanufacturing, of giving products a second life, it just feels like it has huge implications way beyond just one industry.
Oh, totally. It's exciting to think about. Like, imagine if we applied the circular approach to electronics, appliances, furniture, the list goes on and on.
It's almost like we need to rewire our brains a little bit.
Totally. We're so used to this idea that newer is always better, but what if it's not? What if sometimes the more sustainable option, the better option, is the one that already exists?
Right. And we're not saying you should never buy new things. That's not realistic.
Yeah, it's more about just shifting our mindset.
Exactly. It's about taking a moment to pause and think about our choices before we just, like, click buy on the newest gadget.
Yes. And it's not just on individuals either. I mean, supporting companies that are prioritizing remanufacturing, that's huge.
Totally. And advocating for policies that support it, even if it's just talking to your friends and family about this stuff, it all makes a difference.
It all adds up because at the end of the day, we have the power to shape the market with our choices, right?
Absolutely. And right now, the message is loud and clear. Sustainability matters, and remanufacturing is a huge part of that solution.
Yeah. It's not about, doom and gloom and giving up everything we know. It's about being creative, finding solutions, changing our relationship with the stuff we buy.
It's about recognizing that what's old can be new again. And sometimes those old things are actually the most innovative, sustainable options out there.
Yep.
Well, that is a bright idea if I've ever heard one. Thanks for diving into this with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.